Hello and welcome to Kabbalah Revealed. I'm Tony Koznak. I'm a student, one of the students, of Rav Michael Lightman, who is the direct disciple of Rav Baruch Shalom Halevi Ashlag, who is the son and direct disciple of Rav Yehuda Ashlag, Bala Salam, better known as the Master of the Ladder, who was acknowledged as the preeminent Kabbalist of the 20th century. I give you those credentials because there is such a thing as a teaching lineage within Kabbalah, and what we are going to speak about is authentic Kabbalah. And we're going to give you a perspective, not of scholars, but of practitioners, people who are Kabbalists. And in this series, you'll get not only an overview of authentic Kabbalah, but also the keys, the basic concepts, the ways of approaching this wisdom so that it can open to you. Because it is a way of study, a way of thinking, and a way of feeling very different from our normal sense of things. And it requires, as any skill does, a mastery of the basics. And in our series of 20 or so lessons, we will cover all of the ones that are important for you to know. But let's start with an overview of Kabbalah, because there's a great deal of confusion about it. There's a lot of information about Kabbalah out there. There are, I think, maybe 1,000 books a year are published on the subject, and almost none of them have anything to do at all with Kabbalah. They're just some kind of a mishmash of people's imaginations of what they think it could be, what it should be, their intuition, their imagination. And it's not their fault. There's a great longing to know what Kabbalah actually is, because there is a sensation that it's important, that it's powerful, and that it has a grasp of something that is hidden in this world. It's called a hidden science for 3 reasons. 1, it has been purposely hidden by the practitioners of Kabbalah themselves, by the Kabbalists. Kabbalah started 4,000 years ago with Abraham, around the year 1947, 1948, before the Common Era. And for that period of time, 2,000 years until the beginning of the Common Era, the destruction of the Second Temple, it was not hidden. It was widely taught. You know the stories of Abraham sitting in the door of his tent and welcoming travelers to come and he would show his hospitality. Well, what he was actually doing was he was feeding them and he was teaching them about the wisdom of Kabbalah. And the type of souls that lived at that time in this world were a little bit more refined than the souls that live now, and they understood it more naturally. But something occurred at the beginning of the Common Era, at the destruction of the temple, that made it impossible for people of that generation and for the 2,000 years that followed to really understand anything in Kabbalah. That's the point at which religions appeared. That's the point at which speculation about how this world works, what the universe is, what the creator is, and so on, grew up in the imaginations of people according to a particular principle that leapt to the forefront within the human being in their development. And this quality within people prevented them from understanding. And so the Kabbalists hid it. So if you don't have access to something, you still have the books. The problem is that it's also called a hidden wisdom because the books themselves are written in a very special language, unbeknownst to the people who are reading them. All the books of Kabbalah are written in a language called language of branches, in which they use words from our world, objects, cup, book, table, family, travels, wars, all of these things that you see in the 5 books of Moses and all the other Kabbalistic books, but they're not speaking of anything in this world. Not a single word of any Kabbalistic book is referring to anything in this world. It only refers to the forces above which create and sustain the things that appear in this world. And so the Kabbalists used a special language that would indicate that what they were really speaking about. And only a student who had attained a certain wisdom would be able to understand and hear it that way. Now, you have to understand that the world that we live in is not a world of causes. It's a world of outcomes. There is nothing that we do in this world that has any effect whatsoever on the upper world where our source comes from, where the things that we see in this world take their roots. No physical action has any effect on it. And that's why any of the things that we do in order to solve our problems here in this world have any effect whatsoever on their outcome. Only a connection to the roots, to the causal level of things, can have any effect whatsoever. And this is what Kabbalah deals with. Our reality as a whole is structured in such a way that there is a world that exists above, so to speak, and a world that exists below. And the language of branches points to what exists in the world below. It speaks about this object, let's say a family. You read about it in the Torah, and the Torah appears to be the story of the Jewish people. Well, a family will move to a location called a land. But the Kabbalists are not speaking about this at all. They're speaking about the abstract forces above that actually create these things and make them occur. And only a wise student can understand what's really going on here. This is the branch level, and this is the root level. So, unless a person learns how to read and understand the key to this language called language of branches, they will continue to see things as they exist in this world. So as a result of those two aspects of hiddenness of Kabbalah, and because of a lack of contact with the teaching lineage and the real methodology, people have still needed to know, but they've had to fantasize, they've had to make concoctions of things, and they've gone according to what they could understand without a correct teaching and without the proper inner properties that would allow them to understand it. And so a lot of myths have grown up. Now we will deal with these in a little more detail when we talk about some of the other basic concepts of Kabbalah, but just a couple of the major ones are that that Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism. Well, it is neither a religion nor is it mysticism. Kabbalah predates religion. Religion is a phenomenon of disconnection from the upper force, of speculation and a misunderstanding of Kabbalah, even though it has a formal similarity with it. Because the Kabbalists created halacha, they created the books that we study and consider to be holy books, and our traditions and so on come from them, but the purpose, the meaning of them, what the books are actually written for and what they speak about, we are not very well in touch with these things. So the relationship with Judaism is like Kabbalah and amnesia. Now, as far as mysticism goes, Kabbalah is a science. It is not a mysticism. It's a way of making a direct connection with things that seem to us magical and unfathomable only because we, in our current state of awareness, don't understand how they work. And it's the same as if you brought a lighter to some tribe that lived on a desert island that had never seen any technology at all. You would be the god of fire, some mystical creature that can produce fire out of your hand. I mean, it's simply a matter of what is hidden and what is revealed. That it's magic. Well, magic implies the using of hidden upper forces in order to manipulate people to get what you want and to cause certain outcomes for your benefit or against other people and so on. But it's impossible to make any contact with the upper forces at all unless a person changes their moral inner nature. The attainment within Kabbalah is a matter of inner transformation, and it is impossible to be in contact with the forces without that. So this simply has nothing to do with anything except somebody's vivid imagination. That only a few people are allowed to study Kabbalah, and there are conditions. The conditions being you have to be Jewish. This is not so, because the Kabbalists all along taught people who were not Jewish by birth. Some of the greatest Kabbalists, in fact, were Gentiles, people of other nations. Onkelos, Rabbi Akiva. The list goes on, and all Kabbalists took students who were worthy students, but not based on some kind of physical attribute, but on an inner attribute that is called Yehud or Yehud. And we'll explain that later. That you have to have you have to have mastered preliminary wisdom, Gemara, Mishnah, and so on before you can study Kabbalah well. If you don't understand what's written in Torah or Gemara, then you're not going to understand Kabbalah either. So it's not that you need these preliminary wisdoms, it's that if you cannot find spirituality in these preliminary wisdoms, you must move to books that talk directly about spirituality in a way that they can't be mistaken for things of this world, like the language in which the Torah is written, or the language of stories, Agada, and so on. And amulets and protection and the use of number and letter manipulations in order to create stuff and to protect people from evil. Well, this is the complete and total opposite of what Kabbalah deals with. In fact, it's completely forbidden. It's considered idolatry that one should use the upper forces for some selfish personal reason here. And besides that, there is nothing to be protected from. So holy water, amulets, red strings, and so on are psychological things, and they have absolutely nothing to do with Kabbalah. And finally, there's the mixture of Kabbalah with Eastern religions, where since we didn't know anything, we made an association with Buddhism or with aspects of Hinduism that deal openly with spirituality, and that's only because spirituality from the books of the Kabbalists were not open. However, that's changed. As of 1995, all books of the Kabbalah were open. The only requirement for Kabbalah to be accepted as a student and to feel and that you should feel safe and comfortable in looking at Kabbalah and seeking the thing that you need, the only requirement for becoming a student of Kabbalah is that you have a need for it. That your answers as to why things happen and to the meaning of your life and your role in it, if these things cannot be answered anywhere else, that's the requirement. And all the great Kabbalists have said so. From the time of the Arion, he said the only requirement was this desire. Rav Kook, who was himself a great Kabbalist, and even the chief rabbi of Jerusalem, when he was asked who can study Kabbalah, he said everyone. So it's not so. And finally, my favorite is that if you study Kabbalah, you'll go mad. It's my favorite because it's like everything else, it's just the way that things appear. The kinds of inner changes that a person goes through as a result of attainment in Kabbalah, of the understanding and connection with reality. The pleasure that they get, the source of the pleasure that they get, is very different from a normal way of thinking. It's opposite because it is the kind of thought that exists in the spiritual world. So to somebody who has an opposite goal from spirituality, a person may appear insane. But not really. So the third reason that the Kabbalah is called a hidden science is because it deals with what is hidden from our five senses. It answers a question that can't be answered any other way. It answers basically, what is the meaning of life? And this is a deep and a severe question, because for a person who has this question, who cannot find the answer in what their traditions tell them, in what their science tells them, in what art and literature tells them, in what psychology tells them, a person who simply cannot be satisfied with anything but the answer to this question, what is the meaning of my life? This is a person who is ready to sense beyond the five senses. The books of Kabbalah tell us that we live in the whole of reality. There is a totality of reality, and that's where we actually exist. Except that we have no sense of that. We have a completely restricted sense of what we are and where we are. So much so that we don't know what will happen in the next moment of our lives. We do not know why things happen, when they happen, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going. There exists a complete and total reality. And this reality is divided and reduced into a system called worlds. By means of 5 worlds, the complete reality, an unending light, becomes reduced to a brightness by which we can perceive. This first world is called the world of Adam Kadmon. The next world is Atzilut. The next is Beria. Then the world of Yetzirah. Then Asiya. You can think of these as levels of consciousness, closeness or distance as it descends from this complete reality, from connection and awareness to it, until finally we reach a disconnecting point called Mahsom, or the barrier. These are spiritual worlds, and below this barrier is our world. Here we have absolutely no sensation of the spiritual worlds, of the place that we actually live and where we came from. Here we have limited sensations that are called corporal or physical. This complete light and whole of reality, by which, if we knew this and was connected with it, we would be able to direct our destiny. We would stop making mistakes. We would understand the forces that guide us. We would become connected with them to such a degree that we would be able to live life in its fullest and for the benefit of all life. And yet, just as Kabbalah itself has been hidden from us, so has this force, this complete reality, been purposely hidden from us, reduced through these levels by a system of 125 steps into this world. What Kabbalah is meant for is to allow a person to trace their steps from descent into this world back through 125 steps all the way to our root in the spiritual world, our source and connection with the total of reality. But in order for us to be able to achieve that, this benevolent force, which we call the Creator, has purposely created a system for us. In other words, this map of creation is not the end of creation, it's the halfway point. It's a process by which we descended from our roots in the spiritual world to the state that we're in now in order to fulfill the plan of the creation itself, in order to rejoin this total of reality. All of the books of Kabbalah, including our Torah, Mishnah, and Gemara, speak only about the states that are found at these levels, both of the reduction as our soul fell from this complete connection, and of the states that we find on the ascent back up. And the method of Kabbalah is the means by which a person can begin to sense and enter the spiritual world. Now, in order to do that, a person needs to be taught what they are made of, what it is that prevents them from the entry into this world, and how they can gain a sense of the spiritual again. And this takes a very special material, very directly created for the purpose of allowing a person to enter the spiritual world. So the books of Kabbalah are written in the language of branches, and they're very difficult for us to understand. It's no wonder that we have great difficulty being able to use them on the surface level to learn anything about how we can enter this higher reality. But the great gift of Kabbalah is that in our generation, since 1995, when the wisdom was opened to the world as a whole and to those who really need it, special books have been prepared for us. These books were written, commentaries written by Bala Salam and by Rabash, his son and his disciple, that for the first time were not written for people, Kabbalists already in the spiritual world. They were written for people who wish to enter the spiritual world. They're written in a special language that allows a person to get a foothold on the first rung of the ladder. And it's from these books, in the lessons to come, that we are going to take our sources. We are going to look at what the quality is that keeps us out of the spiritual world, what it is that allows us to enter the spiritual world, and the method revealed in the science of Kabbalah through the works of Bala Salam. The wisdom of Kabbalah teaches a practical method of attaining the upper world and the source of our existence. By realizing our true purpose in life, man attains perfection, tranquility, unbounded enjoyment, and the ability to transcend the limits of time and space while still living in this world. Join us next week as we begin this exciting journey. Hello and welcome again to Kabbalah Revealed. I'm Tony Kozenek. In our first show, we did an overview of what Kabbalah is about, what it is and what it isn't. And if you recall, what Kabbalah is for a person who asks the question, what is the meaning of my life? So let's see where we go from here. Let's start with a definition of Kabbalah and see what that definition is and where it can lead us. Kabbalah is a wisdom, a science, that enables man, a person, to feel and know an upper reality. This is how it addresses the purpose of life, but of course it brings up questions. What is a person? What is a man? What is an upper reality? And what is it that enables a person to feel, know, and enter an upper reality? If you recall, we looked at this diagram before, in which we see that we live, our existence happens within a complete and total reality that depends on nothing, that is unbounded, in which everything is completely interconnected, that is filled with infinite pleasure, complete knowing, and contact with everything that exists in reality. And yet the Kabbalists tell us, the ones who have attained this whole system tell us that for a certain purpose, we descended from this way of existence, this way of being, through a system called worlds. Worlds are olamim, from the Hebrew word olam, which comes from the root ha'elem, which means to hide, hiddenness. And we descended from this complete connection with reality until we reached a place, a crossover point called a barrier, and our existence happens in a very, very limited way here in a place called our world. Our world is a place that has no sensation whatsoever of any of these worlds, and these are spiritual worlds, all of these. This is what's considered to be the physical world or corporality. So, if you want to know the purpose of life, the meaning of your life, it would be a good thing if you knew what the plan was. And it seems like that's an impossible thing. It's almost a source of jokes that anyone could possibly answer that question about the meaning and purpose of life. But that's where the Kabbalists start. Those who have attained this entire reality tell us that there is a plan, a blueprint for all of reality and for all of creation. They tell us that the purpose of life is to create a creature and to fill that creature with unbounded delight. To create a creature and to fill the creature with unbounded delight. That is the complete and total meaning, purpose, direction of everything that ever can occur, will occur, only happens for that purpose. In that thought, in that intention, in that thought behind all of creation, all of the rules for everything that would occur were set down. All the principal laws that govern the spiritual and physical worlds, all are rooted in that one thought. And nothing that happens in this world happens for any other reason than in order to create a creature and bring that creature to unbounded delight. So, what is it that keeps a person out of the spiritual world? What is a person? Well, we have to understand how our perception of this reality, the way in which we perceive reality, causes a hiddenness for us. This is a person, a closed box with 5 openings. These 5 openings are our 5 senses. Now, surrounding the person is an upper reality, a complete reality, the spiritual. And from that complete reality, things approach us. That is, what appears to be an exterior reality of some sort of unformed something approaches the person, and through the five senses that we possess, we determine what that thing is. In other words, what does reality consist of according to my senses? So this spiritual object approaches the box, but something odd happens here. It doesn't actually enter the box. The box is a closed system, because rather than this object coming in, it hits a barrier, a kind of transducer like an eardrum or a retina or a nerve on the surface of the skin or a taste bud. And instead of getting the thing on the outside, this thing gets reduced and is passed through a program, this thing here. And as it passes through this program, it gets interpreted into something that we can understand according to certain principles within the program. Once it passes through this, it leaves our box or this machine, and what it produces is our reality. So it doesn't matter how sensitive this sensor is. Let's say it's your eye. It can be the Hubble telescope, or it could be you could be completely nearsighted and unable to see the thing directly in front of you. It doesn't matter the degree of sensitivity. What matters is the programming. What happens here within this subjective system in the machine? Whatever it is that comes into here can only be what this program says that it is. Not what this is, but a reduction that can be understood by the program. So, what is this program that limits this? This is objective reality, and this is the limited portion of it that we can perceive. This program is called egoism. It's self-concern. What's in it for me? How is this going to affect me? As a result of this, the person is locked into a subjective view of all these things, only in relation to how it feels inside of the box. And at no point does it have any sense of what really exists outside of the box. So we've got a problem because every single one of our five senses works by exactly the same program. Not one of them can tell us anything about what exists outside of that program. So in order to know what surrounds us, what the greater reality is, we need to develop an additional sense. What the Kabbalists call a sixth sense. Not the sixth sense of the lady who tells your fortune, but a sense that actually can make contact with what exists outside, that is not bounded by that kind of programming. And in order to do that, well, you have to need to do it. It's not possible to work outside, to build something outside of this box as long as we are satisfied with what's in it for me. But the thought of creation has built in it laws that bring a person to this complete fulfillment. There is a motivating force that allows us to come to the point where we need to get out of the box. And if we understand both what we are, which is the will to receive what's in this for me, that we are built as egoists, but that's okay, because it's actually what we need in order to reach this fulfillment. There's nothing wrong with it. We just have to learn how to use it, how to harness it, and how to harness the force of development that the thought of creation has provided for us. So what is it that moves things in reality? What makes things happen? Nobody does anything in this world, whether it's an inner thing or whether it is a spiritual thing that is beyond this world. Everything that happens only as a result of, well, let's look at it. You're sitting there. You're maybe shifting in your chair, where your eyes are moving to. Maybe you've picked up something to drink. Any motion that you are now involved in is happening only as a result of one calculation. That you have become uncomfortable where you are, that a need has evolved in you, has appeared, and you have moved to a new position or a new situation that you believe will bring you more pleasure than the one that you were in before. This lack and the filling of pleasure and a force of desire is what motivates everything in reality. And this will eventually take a person from the corporal world, from our perceptions of the physical world, the limitations that we experience and the suffering that goes along with it. And it will bring a person, if properly used, past that barrier and into the spiritual world in this way. We all feel desires and we feel them change, but we don't really pay attention to this system that is placed in us by nature well enough so that we can understand what it's doing for us. We all understand that our first sort of grasp of what pleasure is just survival type pleasures. The first category, we see pleasure as and require sex, food, and shelter. All of our efforts, our work, what we perceive around us, the whole goal of our lives has to do with finding and getting these things. And this is a desire that we have in common with animals. It doesn't require other people. We just need this to survive. And once we have this filled, we realize that life is about much more than that, and we can't be satisfied with it. And a second category of desires appears. This is a desire for wealth. Wealth is the accumulation of the first category, so that I'll never have to worry about it again. I will be able to control it. And once we fill this desire for wealth, we come to the feeling that, is that all there is? Something else grows in us. Now, notice that it's not simply that it's another desire that's growing, but it's a greater desire, one that encompasses the one before it. In other words, here we have a small desire and a small filling. And here we have a desire that is grown, and it requires a greater filling. And this one is incorporated in this one. So now, if I can't be filled by wealth, there's a new desire that arises in me, and that is a desire for power. This doesn't happen only to the individual in their lives, but it's happened to humanity as a whole throughout history. The whole scope of history has been the evolution of these desires. Power is the ability to control both this and this, all systems that will bring me the greatest collection of that. Now, this is political power, this is empire, this is control in my job, and once I have that, I can no longer be satisfied with it. I become empty, I feel a lack, and a fourth desire is placed inside of me, a greater, expanded desire for something that encompasses all of that, and that is knowledge. Knowledge is the barrier, in a sense, of what it is that we define as the physical world. These desires, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all have to do with what we perceive as pleasure, that is, what we are being filled with and what we want, what will satisfy us. Well, knowledge is science, it is religion, it's art, it's the pinnacle of what we consider to be what humanity could possibly achieve. And yet anybody who seriously delves into this very great desire and attempts to fill it eventually discovers that this is empty as well, that there are no answers in science for the real causes of things. Because there's no answer to purpose. There's only mechanical answers, and the answers only have to do with these desires. Religion, though it gives us beliefs, cannot give us access to what it is that we really want, a direct knowledge. And so once a person becomes empty as a result of having this fulfilled, something very different and very special happens. A new desire arises. But this desire is not a desire from this world. This is a desire placed within our heart, which is the sum of all desires that we have. both for this world and for what's beyond it. A desire is placed in us from a completely other level of development, from the greater reality. And what appears inside of our heart is a point in the heart. That's what the Kabbalists call it. This point is a part of the greater reality. It has an aspect of spirituality which, if this desire becomes fulfilled, unlike these, it grows continually until it fills our entire experience, our entire existence, and can bring us into the spiritual world. So, what is an upper reality? Well, the Kabbalists who have attained the totality of reality tell us that it consists of a particular quality. They tell us that we are created in exact opposite phase to the quality that exists in the upper worlds, and this is why we cannot perceive what's there. It appears as though there's nothing there at all. We know from the drawing that what we consist of, what the man or the person or the creature consists of, is egoism. That's what's inside of the box, and what's inside of the box is called the will to receive. And this will to receive makes us experience limited existence, makes us experience suffering, isolation, and all of the things that we find difficult about life. And what exists outside of this in the non-subjective condition of egoism is an objective reality that the Kabbalists tell us is the will to bestow. The will to bestow is unconditional altruism. In other words, the experience out here is unlimited existence, unbounded pleasure, and delight. And yet we can't feel this because we have no means to get there, or do we? There is a quality of the spiritual world that differs also in its quality from the physical world. In the physical world, movement, what would get us from one place to another, is purely mechanical. That is, I can take two objects that are completely different in their form, even in their purpose, and I can draw them close together mechanically, and I can say, we have closeness here. But in the spiritual world, things can only be considered to be close under completely different conditions because there is no time and there is no space. There's nothing mechanical there. The Kabbalists tell us that the spiritual world is made up only of feeling states, of spheres of influence that have to do with certain attributes, qualities, inner qualities, and that all movement in spirituality consists of similarity or dissimilarity between two feeling states or two qualities. In other words, we can see this in friendship. If my friend takes a certain delight in comedy and I don't care for comedy, I'm just a serious person, then it's not very likely that we're going to be very close friends. If I hate comedy, then we are considered to be distant. But if I love comedy and I love the same comedians and the same films that they did, then in this respect of the love of comedy, my friend and I are close in that feeling. In other words, in spirituality, if two attributes, two feelings are similar, they're considered to be close. If they are different, they're considered to be distant. But, and this is the most beautiful and precious thing for us, the thing that can actually move us from the physical into the spiritual, and that is that if they have exactly the same quality and purpose and intention, then they are the same thing. They are bonded, connected. And it's this law called the law of equivalence of form that can get us from our egoistic state of separation to be able to build an additional sense that can feel what's outside. What we need to do is to build within us a similar frequency, a similar quality, an additional sense that has a quality of this bestowal within it. Though we're not yet capable of perceiving it in its simplicity, the Kabbalists tell us that there are only two things that exist in reality. There is only the Creator and the creature. Everything that we perceive is simply the quality of the Creator and the qualities of the creature. The Creator is the upper world, and the creature is the lower world. The quality of the Creator is the will to bestow. The quality of the creature is the will to receive. This is all that exists. And getting out of the box means that what we need to do is to move in spiritual space. And moving in spiritual space means to change this quality, the will to receive, of the quality of the creature, to become more and more similar to the quality of the Creator. The way in which all of reality has been hidden from us through a descent through these worlds, well, these worlds are only made up of ratios of the will to receive against the will to bestow. And the entire ladder by which we descended into this world can be climbed simply by changing our inner quality of reception, egoism, the desire to receive for myself, to greater and greater ratios of the will to bestow rather than the will to receive. So each one of these steps of the ladder, are increasing ratios of the will to bestow over the will to receive. And by this increase in similarity, by being able to feel what the quality of bestowal actually is, what it means to love and support everything that exists, and to build that similarity in myself, that is what Kabbalah deals with. It's a method of being able to sense bestowal and to create an inner similarity to this quality. And this is what we will continue to investigate as we look at the keys to the hidden wisdom. Join us again. again, and welcome to Kabbalah Revealed. I'm Tony Kozenek. Last time, we spoke about the force of development, the progression of desires, the way in which reality moves us along a path of development. We spoke about the quality that is the definition of the upper worlds, the spiritual worlds, the quality that is the definition of the physical world, and what it is about the way that we perceive that makes the spiritual worlds the greater reality hidden from us. We looked at the progression of desires. We saw that there were 4 categories of desires that are considered physical, and that because of the thought of creation, which is to create a creature and to bring that creature to unbounded delight, it must progress by means of what the creature finds delightful. And so all expression of development from the thought of creation is expressed through a lack and a filling. And we saw that desires progressed from simple desires, animal desires, for sex, for shelter, food, family. And when that was filled, we moved on to a greater desire, which is a desire for wealth, which is an accumulation of the first one. And when that feels empty to us because we are still feeling something driving us, something that's pushing us ahead, something that's pulling us forward, we feel that thing as a kind of a taste, as something that we must have, and we move towards it. And once we have it, we can't taste it anymore. But this is the force of development moving us on. And from wealth, we move on to fame, power. Once we fill that, we're moved on by our emptiness into knowledge. And then once we find knowledge empty, we find ourselves in a confusing situation in which nothing from this world can satisfy us. And if you recall, it's at that point at which a completely new level of development becomes accessible to us. So, when that special desire enters the heart from the spiritual, which is qualities of the will to bestow, it changes everything within the human heart. And the human heart, when you hear the term heart in Kabbalah, it means the sum total of all desires that a person has. This heart is still filled with desires that come from the physical world. These are still the things from categories 1, 2, 3, and 4. This desire, which is a desire to reach the spiritual, is called Israel, from 2 Hebrew words, yashar, meaning straight, and el, meaning God. A desire for a direct connection with God. These corporal desires are called nations, the nations of the world. In other words, the desires of the physical world. Up until this point, the force of development, the way in which desire moved us until we came to a point where we actually needed to feel what was above the physical world, happened in an unconscious way. But from now on, it has to happen in a conscious way, because this point in the heart is a spiritual gene. It's like the embryo of the soul, and the soul is a kind of a desire. And it must be filled, the heart must be filled with this desire. It must fill everything despite these other corporal desires. In other words, all of the desires that we have to undergo a transformation, a correction. And it's by correcting these desires that the desire to go directly to God can be fulfilled. Now, why is that? In our original state, at the root of our soul, we were connected to the Creator as the creator and the creature. In fact, these are the only two things that exist in creation, the creator and the creature. And here we were adhered to the creator as one being, as one unified creature. But because of the thought of creation, which is to create a creature and fill it with delight, that was only the starting point. It was the beginning of a system. And this quality of the creature, which is the will to receive, started to expand purposely. And as a result of the expansion of this quality, of this desire to receive for myself alone, a greater diversity in quality started to grow between the quality of the creator, which is bestowal, and the quality of the creature, which is reception. And as this egoistic intention expanded, the first creature, the whole creature, the collective soul called Adam Harishon, meaning the first man, descended through a system of worlds, through 125 steps, to greater and greater egoism until the soul reached a point in which it became separated into what appears to be physicality. That is, the collective soul was shattered into 600,000 parts, each one of these parts having a piece of the original, each one of these parts a desire. Now, because this is a process, and this is only the halfway point, this broken, shattered aspect of the collective soul in which we experience isolation, separation from each other, a kind of antagonism towards each other, a desire to exploit each other, and an experience of the physical world. This is the halfway point, and it is going to be corrected. It's going to rise back up through this system of worlds, back into this state of adhesion with the Creator, but it can't do it all at once. So purposely, it was broken into 600,000 parts. Each one of these parts was likewise broken down into 613 desires. That is, each individual desire within Adam Harishon consists of 613 desires that can be corrected. The parts are small enough. It's like dividing a huge treasure and giving a coin to each person, knowing that each one will return this quality of bestowal, this point in the heart that's placed inside of it, can be trusted to bring that point back to its origin and put the treasure back together as a collective once again. So in the point in the heart of the individual who begins to feel this desire for spirituality, this coin from the treasury of the king, plus the 612 other desires that exist in the heart, must be transformed bit by bit to resemble to a greater degree the quality of the Creator, to reverse this process. Now the thing is, this process of the return, of the correction, of the tikkun, of the transformation, of the fulfillment of the thought of creation, it's going to happen. And all of us, all 600,000 pieces of the collective soul are going to rejoin and are going to ascend from physical, selfish perceptions and a world of suffering back into a complete whole interrelationship with each other in such a way that we reach the goal of creation, which is adhesion to the Creator and the complete filling and of the greatest unbounded desire. It's going to happen. But the question is, will it happen consciously with our agreement, or will we be pushed to it? You see, there's one goal, and the goal is assured, but there are two paths to the goal. One path is called the path of pain, and the other path is called the path of Torah and mitzvot. Now, the path of pain is the path that we're all already on. It's not even really a path. It's what we see as the slow, grinding evolution of humanity that we call history. It is a kind of clinging to our physical way of perceiving, to the characteristic that we really need to transform. And as a result of this non-conscious involvement with the process of development, we find ourselves being pushed by events. We see catastrophes, we see tsunamis, we see wars, we have personal experiences in our lives, experiences of pain, experiences of suffering that are caused only by the lack of conscious involvement with the process of the development of desires and their correction. Now this path can go on and on and on, and it's disastrous. Once the point in the heart appears in a person, though, it becomes a conscious involvement. And this is the path of Torah and mitzvot. Torah means instruction by the light. And mitzvot means a transformation of a quality of one of the 613 desires from its egoistic expression to its altruistic expression. Every event that happens in our lives is really a mitzvah, a possibility for transformation being presented to us. Now, when I say the word mitzvah, I don't mean like the physical commandments where you are instructed to do a certain thing and there's a list of all these things in the Shulchan Aruch, in the table of the Jewish law and so on. Do this physical thing. Now, I'm not saying don't do the physical thing. But what I mean is that this is an inner correction. It's a correction of desire. So whether you do the external good deed, whether it's a religious good deed or whether it's something that we consider to be something nice for somebody else, you can do any external deed and you can be filled with hatred and selfishness. You can't measure anything by that. Talking about one of these 613 desires that's presented to us as an event in our life. Our entire lives are planned in such a way by this process of development to present us with the opportunity to take what we first feel as a desire to receive for myself in a given situation and transform that into its altruistic form, to try to understand what the thought of the Creator is, the thought behind giving me that situation. Because, as you remember, the only way that we progress along a spiritual space is by altering a quality within me to resemble that quality in spirituality that I want to enter. So what it is that I want to know, according to this new desire, this desire straight for the Creator, is I want to know the Creator. I want to have a direct sensation. I want to feel in my desires, in the tangible things that occur in my life, what is the thought of the one, of the upper one, of that upper level that gave me this perfectly structured situation, that gave me this opportunity, like a birthday present, for me to take it first in its corrupted form and by analyzing this and seeing what it is, feeling what his thought is behind it. That's a mitzvah. That's tikkun. That's transformation. These 125 states by which we descended from our connection to the complete reality down into our separated status as individual people and desires, these 125 steps are also completely encompassed by these 613 mitzvot. So that the correction of these transformations will bring the individual all the way back up the ladder. Another feature of this is that each and every level of descent is imprinted in us as a gene. Every point by which a greater and greater degree of the will to receive was added is remembered by us, like breadcrumbs on a path. And this being the first spiritual gene, this point in the heart, our access to ascent, is actually the entry point on a chain of spiritual genetics called reshimot, remembrances. And all of the events that happen in our lives that bridge us between these 613 transformations of the will to receive to the will to bestow that bond us to the Creator, each event is laid out for us in a perfect pattern so that we have the opportunity to recognize what it is that we need to do. Now, this action of correction and transformation, this tikkun, is not done by us. It's done as a result of a desire that we have to make this contact with spiritual light. And as a result of the desire that we have, the work is done by the light. It's an action done on us by surrounding light. The Zohar says, when a person comes to purify themselves, they're helped from above. In other words, it's as a result of a gut-level need that used to be a need for those four corporal desires being transformed into a greater and greater need to know what the quality of bestowal actually is. We can't reach this ourselves. This work is called the work of God, not because we go out there like a bunch of nice soldiers and do the job that God assigned us. It's because the work itself of transformation, purification, tikkun, is done on us by the light as a result of an expanding desire. But don't be confused by the word light. Don't think of it as a physical thing. Remember that the quality of the spiritual world is a quality of attributes. It's a quality of intention, feeling states. And if you want to feel the contrast between your intention and the intention of the light, then you can't simply have a desire and have it filled directly by some kind of pleasure the way that we do that in the physical world. In order to feel the difference between our state and the state of the light, my intention and the intention of the light, it's necessary to have a sensor, something that can feel the light. And this sensor must be an intention. It's called a screen. This is what we referred to in our last show as the additional sense, the sixth sense. Now, this screen acts as a resonator, a contrast point between the desire that sends this which is given by the light, and rather than having it just go directly in, it hits this screen and it causes a sensation of difference between the intention here and the intention here. And this screen, or mesach, this is the tool. This is the way in which we can turn the will to receive, which is our matter, and the only tool that we have to work with, into something very different. We can begin to feel and receive the light only according to an intention that matches the intention of the spiritual world. Now, we'll deal with this more later. But what happens when this can actually occur, when the feeling in here and the intention in the screen is the same as the intention in the light? This is called a corrected desire. And this contrast creates a need in us, the right need, a particular need. It builds a lack in a particular direction. It makes us want to feel what we don't have, and that is the sensation of the light, the thought, the intention behind the light. And it moves us in the intended direction of greater and greater correction. Every time that a desire moves in transformation from its corrupted form into its perfected form, a transformation from its will to receive to the will to bestow, this puts us in touch with eternity. It connects us more and more to the thought behind the entire process. And not only does it do that for this one particular desire and for one individual, but as a result of the connection and the interconnection in Adam HaRishon, that part of person number one, that desire within person number one, like a hologram, becomes corrected in each one of the other desires and reconnects them to each other. So it raises not only the person who does the correction, but their entire world, so that our perception of our reality, the reason that things happen, the thought behind it, whether or not good and bad things are occurring, this changes. A person can feel the total goodness behind the guidance of the entire system and is no longer fooled by physical ideas of what's good and evil. This perception of the love behind the process is really what enlightenment is. Now we see good and bad events surrounding us, things that we want to happen and things that we feel should not happen. And this sense that we do something right or we do something wrong, that we make a certain act and we're punished for it, that there is a good force and a bad force in reality, this is not reality. This is the way that it appears to the will to receive. And enlightenment means that we can see, despite anything that appears to us, what the real unifying thought is behind that. Join us next time when we look at the force of development, the reason for suffering, and how we can rise above that.